Lisa Park's hands trembled as she checked the patient monitor for the third time in 2 minutes. Room 314, Bed B. The name on the chart read Daniel Chen, but it was the face that made her blood turn cold. 22 years old, motorcycle accident victim, severe head trauma. The exact same age, the same injuries, even the same stubborn cowlick in his dark hair. It was like seeing a ghost, because 3 years ago, she'd watched his identical twin brother die in this very ICU while she was distracted by a personal phone call. Welcome to Human Stories. Have you ever been given a second chance to make things right? Hit that subscribe button, because tonight's story will show you that even our deepest failures can become our greatest purpose. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's ECU hummed above Lisa's head as she stood frozen in the doorway of room 314. The monitors beeped steadily. Heart rate 68, blood pressure stable, oxygen saturation 94%. Numbers that should have been reassuring, but instead felt like an accusation. These were the same numbers she should have been watching 3 years ago when David Chen flatlined while she argued with her divorce attorney. Daniel Chen lay motionless in the hospital bed, his face peaceful despite the maze of tubes and wires keeping him alive. The resemblance to his deceased twin was uncanny. The same determined jaw, even unconscious. The same calloused hands that spoke of hard work. David had been a construction worker building skyscrapers. Daniel was a mechanic. Different trade, same work ethic inherited from parents who had immigrated with nothing but hope. Lisa forced herself to step into the room. She'd been working the night shift for 15 years, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt like Judgment Day. The ventilator beside Daniel's bed whooshed steadily, but each mechanical breath reminded her of David's final moments. The way his chest had stopped rising while she was focused on her phone, promising her ex-husband she would pick up Emma from soccer practice. The irony wasn't lost on her. Emma was now 16, planning to study nursing, inspired by her mother's dedication to saving lives. If only Emma knew the truth, that her mother had failed at the most crucial moment. 3 years ago, David Chen had arrived at St. Mary's ICU on a Tuesday night, just like his twin brother tonight. Same circumstances. Motorcycle accident on Highway 101, hit by a drunk driver who walked away with minor injuries. The parallels felt orchestrated by some cruel cosmic force. David had been conscious when they brought him in, alert enough to give them his mother's phone number, lucid enough to ask if someone could call his twin brother Daniel. "Tell Danny I'll be fine," David had whispered through the oxygen mask. "Tell him not to worry about the bike. We can fix anything, right?" Those were among the last words David Chen had spoken. Within 6 hours, his intracranial pressure had spiked, and what started as routine head trauma became a fight for his life. Lisa had been assigned as his primary nurse. Young, confident, with 5 years of ICU experience and a reputation for never losing a patient. The Chen twins had been orphaned at age 15 when their parents died in a house fire. They'd raised each other, working multiple jobs to pay for a shared apartment, taking turns going to trade school. David had finished first, then worked double shifts to put Daniel through mechanic training. They were each other's everything. Lisa could still replay that night in excruciating detail. Her ex-husband had been threatening to file for full custody, claiming her work schedule made her an absent mother. She'd stepped into the supply closet to keep her voice down. "You're never home, Lisa," Michael had shouted through the phone. "Emma needs stability, not a mother who works all night and sleeps all day. I work nights to pay for Emma's school, her dance classes, her future, Lisa had replied, exhausted and frustrated. Everything I do is for her. The argument had continued for nearly 10 minutes, with Lisa checking her watch and promising herself she'd hang up after each response. Just one more point to make, one more defense of her choices, one more attempt to explain that her work mattered. When she finally returned to the ICU floor, chaos had erupted around room 314. Dr. Martinez was barking orders, nurses were running with medications, and the code blue alarm was blaring. Lisa's heart had stopped when she saw the room number. She'd pushed through the crowd of medical personnel, her training taking over even as her mind refused to accept what was happening. David Chen's pupils were fixed and dilated. His brain scans showed massive swelling. The young man who had joked with her earlier about his brother's terrible cooking was gone, leaving only a shell kept alive by machines. The family had made the decision to remove life support 2 days later. Lisa had volunteered to disconnect the ventilator, a small act of penance that felt completely inadequate. Daniel Chen had not blamed her directly. He'd been gracious in his grief, thanking the entire medical team for their efforts. But Lisa had seen something in his eyes during those final days. Not accusation, but a quiet devastation that cut deeper than anger ever could. After David's funeral, Lisa had tried to find Daniel to apologize, to somehow make amends, but he disappeared, leaving no forwarding address, no contact information. It was as if losing David had erased Daniel's entire existence from the world they'd shared. The guilt had consumed her life. She'd thrown herself into work with desperate intensity, volunteering for extra shifts, studying every medical journal, attending every training seminar. She became known as the nurse who never made mistakes, who never missed a detail, who never left a patient's side. But her colleagues' respect felt hollow when she knew the truth. Her relationship with Emma had suffered despite her efforts to hide her guilt. Children are perceptive, and Emma had sensed the change in her mother. The spontaneous laughter became rare, replaced by a careful, measured version of happiness that felt performative. The divorce had been finalized 6 months after David's death. Michael had gotten joint custody, and while Lisa had managed to avoid losing Emma entirely, she'd lost the easy, natural relationship they'd once shared. Tonight's shift had started like any other. Lisa had arrived at 7 p.m., received a report from day shift nurses, reviewed each patient's condition and care plan. St. Mary's ICU housed 12 beds, each one occupied by someone fighting their own battle. The call from emergency had come at 9:15 p.m. Motorcycle accident, severe head trauma, ETA 10 minutes. Lisa had automatically begun preparing the room until she'd seen the patient's name on registration paperwork. Daniel Chen, age 22, next of kin, none listed. Her hands had started shaking then and hadn't stopped since. The other nurses had noticed her reaction when Daniel arrived, the way she'd stepped back from the gurney, the pale shock on her face. Charge nurse Patricia Williams had asked if she was all right. "I'm fine," Lisa had managed to say, though they both knew it was a lie. "I can handle this." Looking at Daniel's face, so perfectly identical to David's that it felt like a resurrection, Lisa wasn't sure she could handle anything. The universe seemed to be testing her in the cruelest possible way. As hours passed, Lisa found herself falling into familiar routine with unfamiliar intensity. Every 15 minutes, she checked Daniel's pupils. Every 30 minutes, she documented vital signs. Every hour, she performed neurological assessments, testing reflexes, checking for any sign of consciousness returning. But tonight was different from every other night she'd worked in 3 years. Tonight, She couldn't allow herself even a moment of distraction. Her phone sat in her locker, powered off. She'd informed the charge nurse that she was not to be interrupted for anything short of a code blue. Daniel's condition was stable but critical. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Kim, had explained that the next 24 to 48 hours would be crucial. There was swelling in Daniel's brain, but not as severe as his brother's had been. Daniel had been wearing a helmet, which had prevented some of the trauma that had proved fatal for David. Around midnight, Lisa noticed a change in Daniel's breathing pattern. It was subtle, a slight irregularity that might have been missed by a less experienced nurse. She immediately checked his oxygen levels, adjusted ventilator settings, and called Dr. Kim. The doctor arrived within minutes and made adjustments to his medication regimen. "Good catch," Dr. Kim told Lisa. "That kind of attention to detail makes the difference between recovery and tragedy." At 3 a.m., during the quiet hours when the ICU settled into its deepest rhythm, Lisa made a discovery that changed everything. While reviewing Daniel's personal effects, she found a worn leather wallet containing a photograph of the Chen twins, arms around each other's shoulders. But it was the writing on the back that made her breath catch. "For David, thanks for believing I could fix anything. Your twin, Danny." Below that, in different handwriting, was David's response. "For Danny, thanks for fixing me when I was broken. See you on the other side. David." Lisa realized that Daniel had been carrying this photo for 3 years since his brother's death. The worn edges spoke of countless times he'd looked at it, held it, drawn comfort from this final exchange with the brother he'd lost. Further investigation revealed that Daniel had moved to Oregon immediately after David's death, taking a job at a small-town garage and living quietly under the radar. He'd been returning to California for the first time since the funeral when the accident occurred, driving David's restored motorcycle to visit their parents' graves. Among Daniel's personal effects was a small notebook filled with addresses, phone numbers, and research notes. The dates went back 3 years. It was a search log. Daniel hadn't disappeared because he was angry. He'd been trying to find her. The notebook contained detailed information about Lisa's career, her qualifications, her reputation at St. Mary's Hospital. There were notes about her volunteer work, her attendance at nursing conferences, her contributions to medical journals. Most surprising, there were copies of patient satisfaction surveys where families had specifically mentioned Lisa Park by name. On the final page, written in Daniel's careful handwriting, was a letter he'd apparently never sent. "Dear Nurse Park, I know what happened the night my brother died. I know you were distracted, and I know you blame yourself for his death. I've spent 3 years wanting to tell you that David would not want you to carry this guilt. He talked about you during those final hours, about how kind you were, how hard you worked to help people. He wouldn't want his death to destroy your ability to save others. I've been trying to find you to tell you this, to ask you to forgive yourself, because David would want you to keep being the nurse who gives families hope." Lisa's hands shook as she read the letter, tears falling onto pages that showed erasure marks and corrections where he'd struggled to find the right words. This young man, who had lost everything because of her negligence, had spent 3 years trying to offer her forgiveness she didn't deserve. At 5:30 a.m., Daniel's condition began to deteriorate rapidly. His intracranial pressure spiked, his heart rate became erratic, and his blood oxygen levels started dropping. It was eerily similar to what had happened to David 3 years earlier. But this time, Lisa was ready. This time, she wouldn't be distracted by personal problems. This time, she would be the nurse David Chen had deserved and Daniel Chen needed her to be. She immediately called Dr. Kim, who arrived within minutes. The neurosurgeon's expression was grim as he reviewed Daniel's latest brain scans. The swelling was increasing rapidly, and conventional treatments weren't providing adequate relief. Surgery would be risky, but without intervention, Daniel would likely suffer the same fate as his twin brother. "We need to move fast," Dr. Kim told Lisa. "Get him prepped for emergency surgery. And I want you in the OR with us. You know this case better than anyone." As they prepared to transport Daniel to surgery, Lisa leaned close to his ear and whispered words she'd never been able to say to his brother. "I'm sorry I failed David, but I won't fail you. I promise you'll see him again, but not today. Today, you're going to live." The surgery lasted 4 hours. Lisa stood beside Daniel's bed in the operating room, monitoring his vital signs with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every heartbeat, every breath, every slight change was noted and communicated to Dr. Kim, who worked methodically to relieve pressure on Daniel's brain. During the most critical moments, when Daniel's blood pressure dropped dangerously low and his heart rhythm became unstable, Lisa found herself talking to David Chen as if he were present in the room. She told him about his brother's notebook, about the letter he'd written but never sent, about the 3 years Daniel had spent trying to forgive the nurse who had failed them both. "Help me save him," she whispered, during one particularly frightening moment when Daniel's vital signs flatlined briefly. "Help me be worthy of his forgiveness." Whether it was David's spirit, medical expertise, or simply the determination of a nurse who had found her purpose in redemption, Daniel's condition stabilized. The surgery was successful, and as dawn broke fully over the city, Daniel Chen was wheeled back to the ICU alive and with a strong chance of full recovery. Daniel Chen woke up slowly, consciousness returning in fragments over several hours. Lisa was there when his eyes first fluttered open, when he tried to speak around his ventilator, when recognition dawned as he focused on her face. "I know you," he whispered, when the breathing tube was finally removed. "You were David's nurse." Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she began, but Daniel interrupted with a weak shake of his head. "I wrote you a letter," he said softly. "Did you find it?" "Yes," Lisa replied. "Daniel, I need you to know. David talked about you," Daniel continued, his voice gaining strength. "In those last hours, he said you were the kind of nurse who made being sick a little less scary. He said you checked on him every few minutes, that you made sure he wasn't in pain. He said you held his hand when the doctors gave us bad news." Lisa's memory of those details was clouded by guilt, but she began to remember moments she'd forgotten, small acts of compassion that had seemed insignificant at the time, but had apparently meant everything to a frightened young man facing his mortality. "I failed him," Lisa whispered. "I wasn't there when he needed me most." "You were there for 3 days," Daniel replied firmly. "One phone call doesn't erase 3 days of caring." David understood that nurses are human, that you have families and problems just like everyone else. He wouldn't want you to stop caring for other patients because of what happened to him. 6 months later, Lisa Park received a wedding invitation. Daniel Chen was marrying his physical therapist, a woman who had helped him through recovery and fallen in love with his capacity for forgiveness and growth. The invitation was handwritten, with a note that brought tears to Lisa's eyes. "Dear Lisa, David would have wanted you to be there to celebrate with us. You saved my life in more ways than one, and I hope you'll always be part of our family. Thank you for showing me that second chances are possible, even when we don't think we deserve them." Lisa attended the wedding, where she met Daniel's bride and heard stories about David that painted him not as a victim of medical negligence, but as a young man who had lived fully and loved deeply. She learned that Daniel had used his insurance settlement to establish a scholarship fund for nursing students, specifically those studying ICU care. The scholarship was named the David Chen Memorial Fund for Compassionate Care, and Lisa was asked to serve on the selection committee. Each year, they would choose recipients based not on perfect grades, but on their capacity for empathy, their commitment to seeing patients as whole human beings rather than medical cases. Emma, now 17 and preparing for college, had decided to follow in her mother's footsteps and study nursing. She'd spent a summer volunteering at St. Mary's Hospital, where she witnessed firsthand the lives her mother saved, the families she comforted, the difference she made during the darkest hours. "Mom," Emma had said one evening, "I understand now why your work is so important. I see how much people need nurses like you." Lisa had finally been able to tell Emma about David Chen, about the phone call that changed everything, about the guilt and redemption that had shaped her practice for 3 years. Emma's response surprised her. "You made a mistake and someone died, but you used that mistake to become a better nurse, and now you save lives because of what you learned. That sounds like the best way to honor someone's memory." The story ends with Lisa beginning another night shift at St. Mary's ICU. Room 314 is occupied by a teenage car accident victim, whose parents pace the waiting room, frightened and desperate for hope. Lisa checks her phone one final time before powering it off and placing it in her locker. Her daughter is safe, her personal life is stable, and her full attention belongs to the patients who need her. As she walks into room 314 to introduce herself to the newest family in her care, Lisa carries with her the memory of 2 brothers who taught her about the weight of responsibility and the power of forgiveness. She carries David's death as a reminder to never take her attention from those who depend on her, and Daniel's survival as proof that redemption is possible. "Hello," she says to the worried parents. "I'm Lisa, and I'll be taking care of your son tonight. Let me tell you what we're going to do to help him get better." The monitors beep steadily, the fluorescent lights hum their familiar tune, and Lisa Park begins another night of turning medical knowledge into healing, clinical skills into compassion, and personal redemption into professional purpose. In the ICU, where life and death decisions are made in split seconds, she has learned that sometimes our greatest failures can become our most important gifts to the world. The night shift continues, and Lisa Park is exactly where she needs to be.